If you're new to AI and let's say you simply use Claude or ChatGPT just for the odd task here and there, you've probably heard the term AI agent. And this video is going to help to explain what an AI agent is, where you can use it, some of the things that can go wrong, and how you can see whether an agent would be useful for you in your own productivity workflow. So let's get into it. When you use ChatGPT or Claude right now, you're just having a conversation with it. You write something, it responds, and that's it. An AI agent is that same technology, except when you ask it a question, it goes off and it does that thing. And that's the difference. And once you understand that difference and how agents work, you'll soon see their power and why so many people are raving about them. So let's get into it. When you use ChatGPT or Claude right now, you're having a conversation with it. You ask it a question and it answers that question. That's the transaction, that's the exchange. An AI agent is that same technology, except instead of answering you, it goes off and does that thing. And that's the key distinction. So if there's only one thing that you learn from today, that's the thing to remember. A chatbot answers the question, an agent goes off and does the task. And once you realize that difference, you'll soon see the power of AI agents and why so many people are raving about them. So what we're going to look at in this video are three things. Number one, the three ingredients. What turns an ordinary AI into an agent. Number two, where it helps, where it fails. So where agents are good, some of the mistakes they can make, and where they can fail. And thirdly, it's going to be over to you to carry out an exercise, only if you want to see where AI agents could be useful in your productivity flow. So first things first, let's look at the three things that make up an AI agent. So the first thing to consider is that when you type a question into ChatGPT or Claude, one thing happens. Words go in, words come back, and then it stops and waits for you. So if you ask it to book a flight, it'll probably tell you which airports you can fly from, the flights that go from there, the regularity of those flights, the destinations. It'll probably give you a whole list of things, how to even book the flight. But it won't book the flight for you because it hasn't got any hands to do it. And that's the first ingredient. And that ingredient we call the tools. Now, a tool is anything that the AI is allowed to reach out to use so that it can carry out that specific task. So, for example, we've got here searching the web, opening a file, sending an email, looking someone up. Those are the tools. So, if we look at these diagrams, on its own, AI is essentially like a chatbot. ChatGPT, Claude, they're very much like chatbots. But once you start giving it the hands and the tools, it's able to do so much more. It's so much more powerful. So the second part to this, ingredient number two, is equally as important, because tools alone aren't enough, because it's very rare that something actually happens with one single step. So if, for example, you ask your colleague to look up shipping rates to see why the shipping rates have increased so much, they're not just going to go and carry out one task, not get an answer, and that's it. No, they're probably going to pull up last year's invoices, see if there's been any rate changes, see if the courier's changed, see if you're just shipping more parcels. And that's the point. They look at multiple different angles to get an answer to that question or to satisfy that task. And it's that second ingredient that's called a loop. The AI does something, looks at what comes back, makes a decision, and eventually carries out that task. It completes it. Or it doesn't carry out that task, it gets stuck and it lets you know. So if we go back to that previous example, a chatbot, you ask it to do something, it's not able to do it. It just gives you some sort of an answer and just stops. The agent will just keep looping and eventually either carry out the task or it will stop because it gets stuck. And last but not least, this is the third ingredient, and this is an equally important one. For agents to be truly effective, they need goals and not just instructions. So an example of this, an instruction might be to just summarize this document Well, a chatbot can do that. But with an agent, a lot more things are possible. You could get, for example, an invoice, ask the agent to extract numbers from that invoice, and then, for example, put those numbers into a spreadsheet, into a specific format, and then to send it on to someone else. These are things which an agent is able to do, which a chatbot isn't. But in order to do that, it needs a goal. And the amazing thing is there are dozens of steps in between which the agent will do, some which you might not necessarily be aware of, in order to achieve that goal. So that's the recipe. So we'll have a look at it again. Number one, the model is the AI itself. Number two, the tools. The agent needs tools. The AI needs tools so that it can act. Number three, loop. So it just keeps going. And number four, a goal. So it achieves a goal, then it stops. And really, that's an agent in a nutshell. There's really nothing more mystical than that. Now, before we go into the next section of this video, this is just a request. If this has been helpful to you at all, if finally you understand what an AI agent is, if you could please like and subscribe to the video, then that would be super appreciated, because what you're doing is you're showing me that you like the content. You're also flagging to YouTube that you like the content and that you probably want to see more of it. But also by subscribing, you'll see any future videos coming up in your feed, so you're never out of the loop. Now, the second section of this video, remember we're going through 3 sections. It's the second section, so we're at the midway point, and this is where it really starts to get exciting, and this is why there's so much of a frenzy with agents at the moment. So agents are strongest. This is where they really excel. Agents are strongest where they're working on tasks that are boring, repetitive, and easy to check. Boring because that's where your time is disappearing, and I'll come on to this in a second. Repetitive because the agent needs some way of telling whether it's on track. And easy to check because you are going to check it at least to begin with. Now, I've got some examples here right at the bottom. Email, and this is a pain point. Well, it was a pain point for me, but it's a pain point for many people. And this is where AI agents are really fantastic. So an agent can check your email overnight while you're sleeping. It can have a look at all the emails that have come in. It can then decide from those emails, let's say, which ones are high priority emails. And then it can let you know by the time you wake up, let's say 6 a.m. in the morning, it can say, hey, Enrico, these are the high priority items that you need to do today. And I've put them in the calendar so that they get time blocked and that you actually carry them out. And that's a process which can save you hours potentially. It's boring, it's repetitive, and easy to check. Another example here that I've got at the bottom is turning 50 PDFs into one spreadsheet in the same shape every time. It's possible. An agent can go off and do that. It can even do more than that, but that's a very simple example which highlights the power of these things. These are boring, repetitive, easy to check tasks which a year or 2 ago you would have had to pay someone to do if you didn't want to do it. And this is where we really begin to see the power of agents. But as with anything good, there's always a drawback somewhere. And I've highlighted 2 things here. So number 1, agents are at their worst when a mistake is easy to miss. So for example, and I've had this before, an agent that I've made sends an email out. I haven't read it. I didn't know it sent the email out, and I panicked when I found out. Or even worse is it gets numbers wrong, and then you make a decision based on those numbers. Let's say you work for a company, you end up using those numbers as evidence for a decision you've made in the company report or in a presentation. Not good. And the second issue with agents, but this is, I would say, generally with AI, is that an agent cannot read your mind. So if, for example, you ask it to carry something out, but you haven't necessarily given it any wider context, it'll probably carry out that task and it'll probably do very well at it. but it might not fully appreciate the nuances around that task. So if, for example, you're working with a client who is very, let's say, difficult to deal with, and you haven't given the agent that context, it might not appreciate the sensitivities around that situation. And that's not the agent's fault. Really, it's your fault. And these things really go to show the power of agents, but the weaknesses of agents. So we just want to keep it balanced, so you don't think that AI agents are these amazing things which don't make mistakes. They do sometimes. So as with anything, there's always a line to draw. So the model to hold on to isn't the AI does the job. The model to hold on to isn't the AI does the job. It's the agent that takes the first 80% of the boring part, and you keep the 20% that requires actually caring how it turns out. And when it comes to agents, there's always this balancing act about how much do you let the agent do autonomously, and how much do you as a human get involved in that process. So for every agent, whether it's small or complex, these are the things which are constantly being balanced. And here we are, we're on the last section of this video. If agents are something which seem interesting to you, then you can carry out this completely optional, maybe 5-10 minute task to help you really decide whether an agent can actually help you. So what I want you to do is to get your notepad or Notion or whatever it is you use, and I want you to think about a task which you do which is boring, repetitive, and you just want to delegate it. And then I want you to write down every single step of that task as if you are giving it to someone who you've never met before. Let's just say they're an alien. They're completely foreign to everything that you do. And then I want to assume that they can't contact you at all, that there's no means of contact to you at all. And I want you to write the list exactly like that. So you're going to write down every single step, where the information lives, what finish looks like, and what to do, let's say, if there's something odd which they can't quite decide on. And then once you finish that, I want you to read it back to yourself and ask yourself honestly, is this something which you could give out to a person and they'll be able to achieve that goal? And if the answer is yes, then that's a strong candidate for, let's say, developing an AI agent. And if it's no, the interesting part is, why not? And if it isn't a task which someone can't carry out, then maybe there's something wrong. Maybe there's some other steps which you haven't considered, or there's some wider context that you haven't considered, or maybe the task is actually unnecessarily complicated, or you might find that it genuinely needs judgment. The task might just be too high risk to get wrong. There might be a high reputational risk if, for example, it sends out an email to someone who's very important and the email doesn't make any sense. And that's really the whole game. It isn't just about picking random tools and implementing them. It's really about mapping out those workflows, mapping out those processes, and identifying the bottlenecks and whether any judgment calls need to be made. And that's really a key way to understand how you could be more productive, whether you are a university student or whether you run a massive company. So with all of that said, there just are a few things you need to keep in mind, just a few things you need to remember. Number one, a chatbot answers. Number two, an agent does. And number three, what makes the difference between those two is an agent has tools, it has loops, it has goals. And where you get the most out of these agents are by helping you with tasks which are boring, repetitive, and easy to check. If this video was helpful, then I'd really appreciate it again if you could like, subscribe, and until the next video, please let me know whether you've actually decided to implement an agent and where it's gone well and maybe where it hasn't gone well. Until next time, take care.